Hi there, it's Stacy Yesner. I have Coffee Talk today. Today I'm going to be talking with Kristine Pokrandt of Goosehead Insurance in Chicago. So we're just waiting for her to join us, and hopefully she will be here very shortly. So if you have any questions about homeowners, renters, car insurance, any kind of insurance, she's the person to ask. So hopefully she will be here just very shortly. I have a few questions to ask. I know everyone's rates have been going up. So I am curious about how everything that has been going on with climate change, all the hurricanes, wildfires have been affecting rates all over the place. Hi there, Kristine. Yes. Hello there.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. You can hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. It's my first Instagram live. Big girl.
I know. It every time I do it, it's getting a little bit easier to get someone in. So I'm very excited to have you here.
Good. Happy to be here.
So, how are things going?
Things are going good. Yeah, definitely an interesting market that we're in, but I think we're fortunate in Chicago that it's still just a really great real estate market. Even with the challenges, we still are not as challenged as some parts of the country. So,
Yeah.
knock on wood.
So
What
let me
about for
ask
you?
you. I have a question for you because I know that with everything going on with global warming, all the more hurricanes and the wildfires, even like the tornadoes that we had in Naperville, how is that affecting um, uh, insurance rates as you are getting people quotes when they're buying condos or single family homes throughout Illinois?
Yeah, insurance is one of those markets that people look at very much as themselves, right? I had no claims. My driving history is great. This home is excellent. But the bigger picture is it's a shared risk environment. And so, when you talk about climate change and large catastrophic disaster, we have some of that here in Illinois. The flash flooding is becoming more prevalent. The tornadoes are becoming more prevalent, but we don't have the wildfires. We don't have the hurricanes. The challenge that we have is historically Illinois and the rest of the Midwest have incredibly low insurance rates in comparison to other parts of the country. And so as those catastrophic risks continue for certain parts of the country, they can't take any more rate in those states. Florida can't pay more for insurance. Texas can't pay more. California can't pay more. And so those carriers, those insurance companies, they start to put some of that rate on low risk and low rate areas. And so what we're seeing in the Midwest is collectively rates are up about 30% year over year, because candidly, they can be, right? As consumers, we don't want to absorb it. Of course, no one wants to pay 30% more, but the reality is they're running out of places to put it. It is the best way to kind of wrap your brain around.
Right. So as someone who's looking at insurance, like you're shopping around, you're buying your first home, are people, and obviously like at Goosehead, you can look at a lot of different carriers as opposed to going to just a single insurance broker, right? Like you have a wide variety. Um, so how do you help a first-time home buyer navigate like what's important to make sure that they're covered, um, and what's something that maybe they don't need as much coverage on?
So I definitely thank you for that question. I work a lot with first-time buyers by the nature of where my business is coming from. And, you mentioned having access to choice. Choice in the insurance space, it's become necessary. It is not just nice to have, it is necessary to have. And Chicagoland is really one of the best examples. We have 100-year-old properties, we have new construction going on, we have condos, we have multifamilies, and the type of insurance that every different insurance carrier wants looks different. They all have a sweet spot. And so when you're going into a new purchase, it's really important to be looking at options, because you may find a fit at company A, but you have no idea if company D isn't the right fit, because the consumer can't look at 30 options, right? Most consumers get tired after a couple. And so it's not just about having a policy, it's about having the right coverage. And so that's where that choice and access to options becomes really imperative. I always encourage my clients, I'm not looking to turn anybody into an insurance expert. Most people don't aspire to that, right? That's just me. But I do think it's important to feel really confident and really educated going into what is, for most people, the largest purchase of their life, right? And so I think, if we're going to skimp on coverage, I don't want to do it without their consent. I want to make sure they understand, in an effort to save cost, if we make this move, here's what it's going to mean for you, and are you comfortable with that? And that consultative conversation, it's really important. And I think even for people that have owned their homes for many, many years, you forget what you have. You forget what you chose out of the gate. And most people just renew, and it becomes out of sight, out of mind. And so having those frequent reviews, it just makes sure that you're in the right spot over time as best as one can possibly be.
And is there something, as you're reviewing someone's policy, that has been covered by a certain, any brokerage or any insurance company? Is there something that you're noticing as you see the changes? We're having more rain, so there might be more seepage, or with the increased winds that we're having, are there certain things that you're seeing a lack of in coverage that people should really check their policies or reach out to you to have you do an audit of their policy?
Appreciate that question. There's a couple things I run into often. So the first thing is, do you have full coverage on your roof, right? So you mentioned the wind. The roof is one of the single largest rating factors on an insurance policy. And every carrier has different timestamps that they allow, whether that's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. And when your roof steps outside of that aging range, your coverage goes to a depreciated value. So think of it like your vehicle, right? Every year it gets older, your coverage shrinks. That is how most roofs are covered, and people have no idea. And windstorms, tornado, hail, they are one of the most common causes of claims in the Chicagoland area. And so making sure, if you can, and it is available to you, that you do have full replacement on the roof, it's one of the largest cost components, right, of a property. The second thing that I see, sewer backup, storm drain backup, water backup in the basement makes up about 1/3 of home claims in the Chicagoland area. It is constant. Chicago is not changing its infrastructure in regards to the sewer. It is a slow moving process. And so for a lot of properties, those basement backups, they're happening frequently. And the rate at which we're seeing those flash floods and rains happen is increasing. That type of coverage is not automatically included in a policy. It has to be added in. So making sure you have water or sewer backup, that's incredibly important. And the third thing, deductible. An effort that insurance agents make over time to hold costs neutral. They reduce coverages or they increase deductibles. It's the two moves that they have. And so making sure that your deductible is in a comfortable realm of what you can pay out of pocket when you're not planning on something. And a lot of carriers, they're going to a percentage, 1% of your home value. Depending on what home you have, that could be a really big number, right?
Right.
So the days of 500 and 1,000, they are shifting, but they're still available. So making sure that your exposure is a comfortable amount, even if you've been in a property, your insurance could be changing and you have no idea if you haven't looked at it.
So, going back to the roof, I just have a question about that.
Sure.
When I know one of the things that we as realtors and during the attorney review period, we always ask, have there been any insurance claims? Now, if there has been a claim on the roof, does that impact a new buyer's insurance coverage on the roof?
It can. So this is a huge shift that we're starting to see in the industry, and it's a really good question for realtors to be looking out for their buyers. When an insurance professional runs the history of a property, it pulls a 5-year snapshot most of the time, and it pulls two numbers. It pulls claims that the previous owner has had, okay, so anything on that property for the last 5 years, and then it also looks back at the buyers, no matter where they've lived, what is their 5-year history as a consumer, okay? So it's looking at a property and a person. Now, something we are starting to see is carriers are starting to go back 7 years. So that 5-year stretch, they're starting to pull 7. So even though sellers don't have to disclose beyond 5 legally, it may still impact the insurance if there is something within 7 years. And then the second shift within that, some carriers are starting to rate using prior owner losses. So they are looking at a property to say, the risk of this property is X. We understand it's not the new buyer, but it is the property. And how do we best underwrite that property? So those are shifts we're starting to see. A little bit of a slow rollout, but do not be alarmed if a carrier goes back 7 years and says we can't insure this property, or takes the prior owner's claims into account from a rating perspective.
And is that happening in older buildings that you're seeing that more of?
All.
Is that happening in condo buildings, or is that happening overall?
It's overall. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And it's not every carrier, right? So
Yeah.
if I quote with 30 different options, there's a handful that are shifting to that. But typically what we see in insurance is they all chase each other's tail. One carrier makes a move, the next one follows, the next one follows, and pretty soon that is just what they all do. Same thing with that deductible. There are certain carriers that have gone to a percentage. My expectation is over the next 5 to 10 years, the remainder will follow suit. And that will just be the world we live in.
And does that have a lot to do with, and that's the aftermath of, all the hurricanes, all the, the wildfires and all the destruction, or the collapse, the condo collapse and all of that? I mean, is that kind of why we are where we are with all of this?
Yeah, very good thought there. It's part of it. So there's a couple things happening in the insurance space. It really is the most perfect storm impacting us that I've ever seen. But you do have the catastrophic impact, right? So the hurricanes and the fires, those states can't take much more rate. So we're starting to bear the burden of that in the Midwest.
Right.
Okay. Coupled with that is during the pandemic, insurance carriers plummeted their rates. Everyone was giving, thank you for being our client, refunds and discounts because people weren't driving, they weren't leaving their homes. But very quickly, things returned to normal-ish, right? And the carriers were not quick to adjust rates. And so their profitability dropped. And then what we saw, claims immediately went up, both in the home and the auto space. But now we saw supply chain delays. So what might have taken 3-4 weeks for a claim is now taking 6-8. Right. In the auto space, some parts, they're delayed by 6 months. And so the cost of a claim has skyrocketed. So they have to take rate because of that. And then you add into that environment inflation, and that is how we got to where we are. It's what the insurance world refers to as a hard market. So there's just all these factors going into play. Carriers shrink the type of properties they want, they increase rates, and the market is just, it's a tough space to place insurance for a lot of people.
So there's some carriers that won't even consider certain types of markets.
100%. There are carriers pulling out of states. There are carriers pulling out of certain types of properties. So we've seen carriers pull out of multifamily properties here in Chicago. They no longer want to do them. And then there's carriers that are still, quote unquote, open for business, but they took a 40% rate increase, right? So it's like, if you want to use our product, you will pay to do that. So it's just an absolute shifting market that we're seeing.
When you say multifamily units, are you talking about condos, or are you talking about like 2 flats?
2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And is that if it's a single family, like an investor, or is that just, you live on the top floor and I'm living on the duplex down or whatever?
It is if it's an owner occupied. So if the owner owns the entire structure, or if it's investor owned and all 3 units are rentals, right? So any multifamily 2, 3, 4,
but not
flat,
not a 3-unit condo building.
No, condo business is very insulated.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Condo insurance is very wide open still.
Got it. But there hasn't been any issues with insuring some of the older condo buildings, like along Lakeshore Drive, because of the safety issues in Florida, with the condo collapse in Florida. There hasn't been any issues with that here in Chicago. Because I know, like, with the questionnaire, there's been more, like, the mortgages, there's been more questions with all of that. There hasn't been any issues with getting those properties insured.
No, it's not hard to get those properties insured. The biggest challenge, and one of the extra steps that I'm taking, is reviewing the master HOA policy, because that is the biggest room for risk, if you will. Mm-hmm. You can be as insured as possible as an individual condo owner, but if HOA policy hasn't been reviewed recently, or if it's just the management has changed hands, the board has turned over, a lot of times we find those master policies out of date, underinsured, or leaving really big gaps for individual unit owners. And so we always want to make sure that we're kind of looking at what does the HOA cover and how can we bridge up to that point. But there hasn't been difficulty in placing that insurance. It's just making sure that there is not big gaps in it.
Got it. Yeah. Got it.
So much. Insurance is so thrilling, right?
So thrilling. But it's so important, because I think that is, people just say, well, what do I do? I'm like, well, here are some people that you should talk to, right? And I know that people get so overwhelmed, and there's certain things that are so important to consider. And insurance is expensive, but you don't want to be underinsured, and you want to make sure you have the right things covered. And some people don't think about it.
The way I encourage people to look at it is, I'm a consumer as well, right? I have a household, so I have a budget, and I don't want to pay more for anything than I have to, okay? So I'm in that boat. But saving money, and especially in insurance, is only good if the coverage is there, right? And so we want to lead with what coverage is necessary, and then back into what is the appropriate cost for that.
Right.
Saving money and then suddenly you have a claim and you don't have the coverage, that will be the most expensive choice you make. And we don't want people in that situation, if you will.
Correct. Right. No, and I mean, because I have people that are renters. I have people, buying, and even renters insurance, right? I don't necessarily want them to get the cheapest coverage because you never know if the person living above you is underinsured, right?
That,
And that's why
yeah,
I don't want them to do the online. I want them to talk to you or, just to talk through and see what their options are.
well, and
So,
that's just it, right? So you look at that shared living, that condo living. I trust my clients because I'm the one advising on coverage. I don't know their neighbors, right? So
correct.
I have no idea what they chose. I don't know what they're covered
Right.
for. And when it comes to a pure liability perspective, this is an area you don't want to skimp on, and you want to assume that everyone's policy around you is going to fail, and you need to have the right coverage for yourself.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah. Wow. Wow. Such fun stuff. The stuff that you don't always think about, that's the important stuff.
Well, I think that's why it's important too, like your buyers going and sellers going through that process. It's important for them to have a partner, right, in that process. The insurance is no different. It's truly important to have a partner of some sort, because unless you're in the insurance environment, most people, they don't read up on it. It's not exciting enough information, and you need someone who can advise and has that expertise and that experience to make sure that you are getting the right option. And self-selecting, if you've never experienced any of it, people don't know what to do. And so humans, right, path of least resistance, we just go to what is priced right. So you want someone to guide you through that.
Correct. And the one thing that I appreciate about you is you will review a policy and you will see if you can match it or do better. And if you can't, you will let them know.
Yeah, 100%. I think professionals need to operate. My goal is that I want people to have first and foremost the right coverage,
Right.
full stop. And then if we have the right coverage, I want them to have the most cost-effective option for that coverage. If it is something I don't have access to, I will never ever push a person towards a policy. I will tell them, you have the right thing. Right. Your coverage looks good. The cost is right. Stay where you are until something changes. And if and when something changes, as it inevitably will, we can re-review this. But I think, information is powerful. It lets us know how to make choices, right? And whether that's moving or sometimes just knowing you have the right thing and you needed peace of mind to tell you that.
Right. Right. And I think that that's what's important. And that's why I have sent you people just to have, my mom appreciated the advice that you gave her. So, and just, knowing that is peace of mind for me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's very helpful. So, yes, but I do appreciate it. I didn't mean to take up so much of your time, but
I'm happy to be a resource. And like you said, if there are people that just need a review or maybe haven't looked in a while, you should never assume you're still in the right spot just because it was the right fit 4 years ago. And so, however I can be a resource, that's absolutely what I'm here to do, and more than happy to do it.
Oh, and I appreciate it. And we should go meet for coffee again.
Real in-person coffee.
Yes, for real.
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely need to set that up.
Okay.
So,
good.
All right. Well,
good. Well, Stacy, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, and have a great afternoon. And we'll schedule something soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Bye.